All right, Dr. Breus, it is awesome to have you on. I want to talk about sleep health, drinking. I mean, this is going to be good. My family, I mean, we are sort of borderline obsessed with sleep, truly.
That's good.
But tell me how did you become, I mean, you're the sleep doc. Like, that's incredible. Like, how did you become the sleep doctor?
So how did I become a sleep doctor, or how did I become the sleep doctor?
That's a good delineation.
Two different stories.
Tell me, give it to me. Let's go. Both.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you what happened. So you don't wake up one day. Actually, many people do wake up and say they want to be a sleep doctor. That wasn't my story at all. So I was getting a PhD in clinical psychology at the University of Georgia. Go Dogs. And I was there specifically specializing in sports psychology. So, University of Georgia, Division I school, they've got a great sports psychology department. You get to work with elite athletes. It looked like it was going to be really cool. So I was doing my PhD, minding my own business, looking at all kinds of different things. And when you finish a PhD in clinical psychology, very similar to a medical degree, you can do what's called an internship or a residency, which is where you go a place for a year and you get to practice all the stuff that you learned in school. And so I found this amazing internship that looked at eating disorders in athletes, which was perfect. It was exactly where I kind of wanted to do my concentration. But if I'm being honest, Molly, I couldn't get in. Only the Harvards and the Princetons and the Yales of the world got in. I went to Georgia. It was a top 20 program, but it wasn't Harvard. But they had a extra funded position on the track for sleep that was fully funded. And it turns out I worked my way through graduate school in the electrophysiology department. So I'm the weirdo who likes to take apart EKG machines and EKG machine, and put them back together and make them work. And they use the exact same machines in the sleep lab that I worked with. So I told myself, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sell myself as a sleep guy, because just because you're not letting me come in through the front door doesn't mean I'm not coming to your program. I'm going to get into it some way, shape, or form.
I love it.
So I sold myself as a sleep guy. I get there day one. I said, hey, I got a question. They said, yes, Dr. Breus. I said, hey, I want to transfer. They said, we kind of had a feeling that was something that you might want to do. So here's the deal. You're funded through the sleep lab. So the first 6 months, you got to be at the sleep lab. But for the second 6 months, you can go to whatever program that we have. I was like, fantastic. How hard could this be? It's sleep, for God's sakes, right? I mean, like, what could be so tough?
Totally.
Molly, by the third day, I absolutely fell in love with clinical sleep medicine, and I knew I was never going to change my path. I'm going to tell you something. I help people this fast. It's unbelievable. When you change someone's sleep, Molly, you change their life, right? And it's so impactful, and it's so basic. It's so fundamental to literally every aspect of your life. I mean, every organ system, every disease state is affected by sleep. Literally, everything you do better with a good night's sleep. And I just thought, this is really cool. I mean, I was literally changing people's lives in 24 to 48 hours, identifying apnea or figuring out narcolepsy or working with somebody with insomnia. And I was just like, this is like the coolest job ever. My son says it is the greatest social hack of all time. He said, because if I go into a party, if I let it loose that I was seeing patients and somebody says, what kind of doctor are you? And I say sleep, the line forms around me. That's unbelievable. And I'm just answering questions, having a blast, having a great time. My son can actually answer most of the questions. So can my wife, by the way, because she's heard it so many times. But it's a fun area of study. I also really liked it because it's been so new. The very first sleep clinic, I think, was in the early 40s. So if you compare that to like Hippocrates, right? So we're really in the earliest stages of understanding the fundamentals of sleep. So new research comes out all the time, which is really awesome. So I get to read new stuff and learn new things and then figure out ways to apply it. So that was how I became a sleep doctor. Now the question is, how did I become the sleep doctor? So I was working for a company called WebMD. I'm sure you've heard of them, as their sleep expert. I had been there for a while, and I was doing PR work for them, and I love WebMD. Great company. I worked there for 15 years. And my attorney was like, why are you doing PR for WebMD? I'm like, well, what do you mean? He was like, well, why don't you do PR for yourself? And I was like, oh, I can do that? I'm a doctor. Like I didn't know about brand building and all this other stuff. I was like, I'm just here enjoying spreading the word and getting people to think about sleep and maybe feeling better and all this stuff. And so we went out and we bought thesleepdoctor.com back in 2008. And I started building the brand and building the website. And, you know, I'm a little bit of a ham, so I didn't mind being on television and doing, you know, PR and getting involved in those kind of things. And I was doing it for WebMD and then really just started to develop the website. And before I knew it, I was the sleep doctor.
Wow. Well done. And so, I mean, this is sort of a interesting question from the perspective that I personally know what it's like when you don't sleep, and it's awful.
Oh, it sucks.
It's awful.
Yeah, it's
so
terrible.
when we think about like what exactly happens when we aren't sleeping and sort of the core problem, because I don't think anybody's ever died from a lack of sleep, but I also know that you've sort of felt like maybe you've wanted to die when you don't sleep. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So the only way somebody could die from a lack of sleep would be if they were so sleep deprived while driving a vehicle, they fell asleep while driving, of course, and then got into a terrible accident, which, by the way, happens more often than you might imagine. Like it's kind of crazy. So the good news is it's almost impossible to truly die from sleep deprivation. But the question is like, why do people not sleep, right? And I have a theory. I don't have tremendous amounts of data on this. Believe it or not, we don't actually know why we do sleep. We know what happens when we don't sleep, right? We know all these terrible things happen to our body. We become dehydrated. Our mental health kind of flies out the window. Our reaction time slows down. I mean, all these physiological things have a tendency to occur. But the question of why we don't sleep, I don't think has been fundamentally answered. But I have an answer. I think the answer is fear. I think it is 100% fear-based. Let me explain. When you're asleep, you are at your most vulnerable position possible, right? Your eyes are closed. You're in a curled up fetal position. It's dark. You have no idea what's going on. You better feel safe. If you feel safe, you sleep. If you don't feel safe, then you don't sleep. And there are a lot of ways to not feel safe. And I'm not just talking physical safety here, right? You could feel emotionally unsafe, like you were in a relationship that you didn't like, or a relationship that's, you know, God forbid, physiologically or emotionally abusive. You could feel financially unsafe, right? That can bring a lot of anxiety too, right? Make you think about the bills all night long. You could be in a career that you feel is unsafe. Right? There's somebody out to get you at work, or maybe your job is actually so physiologically straining that it could cause some physical damage to you. I mean, there's a lot of versions of fear and feeling unsafe, and I think that drives most sleep-related problems. Now, let's be fair. Sleep apnea, which is mostly a biologically driven situation where your throat closes in the middle of the night and you can't breathe. How could that be fear-driven? Well, I would argue that when you stop breathing, your brain gets pretty fearful, right? And says, wake the heck up. So again, like, I mean, you can stretch the definition a little bit, but I would say that generally speaking, I think the biggest reason why people don't sleep is fear related. And what fear does, biologically speaking, is it elevates heart rate. And that is the key factor. If you can get a heart rate below 60, we can get you to sleep, generally speaking.
Wow. And I want to talk about that because I know breath work and all those things can
I'm a big
help.
fan.
And you call sleep disorders disordered sleep.
So there's two different things. So there's sleep disorders, that's formerly apnea, narcolepsy, insomnia, sleepwalking, sleep talking. There's about 88 different sleep disorders. What I've spent my career for the last 15 years studying has been disordered sleep. So it's like, I don't have an official diagnosis of apnea. I don't have an official diagnosis of insomnia. But Michael, I go to that room in the back of the house. I come out 6 hours later and I feel like shit. What's going on there? That's what I try to study.
Got it. And so how do you know if you're getting enough sleep? Like how do people know beyond maybe how you feel or how do people know?
No, you hit the nail on the head. It's how you feel. It's when you wake up in the morning. Let's be fair, Molly. You are your best doctor, okay?
Yep,
you know your body better than anybody else. And when you wake up in the morning after, let's say, 45 seconds to a minute and a half so the cobwebs have cleared, you know if you had a good night's sleep or not. You're well aware of what's going on. So I would argue there's a very large perceptual component, and I think we do a fairly decent job of it. But a lot of times we do things that we think are going to be helpful to our sleep, and they turn out to only help sleep for a short period of time, and then they do damage to the sleep for the other period of time. An example of this would be alcohol, right? Alcohol is the #1 sleep aid in the world. More people drink themselves to sleep than any other substance known on earth. Okay, wow. Alcohol makes you feel sleepy, that's for sure. It even increases stages 3 and 4 sleep in the very beginning of the night. However, once you've metabolized through that alcohol, boom, you wake up, you got to pee multiple times, and good luck getting back into deep sleep again. It basically destroys some of the deeper stages of sleep. And by the way, the sleep that it messes with in particular, called deep sleep, delta sleep, or stage 3-4 sleep, those terms are synonymous. That's the sleep where our waste management system comes in and pulls out all of these proteins that build up in your brain all day. And when you don't get rid of the proteins, they wrap around your nerves in your brain, and that's called Alzheimer's disease. And we don't want that shit. So we want to get as much get as much stage 3-4 sleep as we can, especially as we're getting older. Again, this is your physically restorative sleep, stage 3-4 sleep. And alcohol, unfortunately, while it does make you feel sleepy, man, it messes with that deep sleep. And so that's an example of something that people think could be helpful to sleep because, hey, it makes me feel a little loose, a little relaxed, and it does damage. I'll give you another one. Looking at the PM medications that are out there, right? So, it's usually some analgesic plus the PM part of the medication. So what is the PM part? 95% of the time, it's diphenhydramine or Benadryl, right? And so this becomes problematic. This is an anticholinergic drug. If you take it every single day, it leads to Alzheimer's. So again, like these are things that people really need to be thoughtful. Like at the end of the day, you don't need a substance to put you to sleep. Now, let's be fair. There are people out there who require a pill to sleep. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I want to be very, very clear here. There's no pill shaming going on here. If you and your doctor have come to the conclusion that you need something like trazodone or Ambien or Xanax or something along those lines, as long as you're not escalating in dosage, as long as you're keeping a steady dose, using it appropriately as your doctor has recommended, I got no problems with you using a sleeping pill. But if you don't like using a sleeping pill, if you feel like you don't want to continue using a sleeping pill, then it makes intuitive sense to talk with your doctor about coming off of it. To be clear, we don't like people just ripping themselves off of sleeping pills on their own. What happens is a very significant rebound insomnia, right? So what happens is when you've been taking, let's say, a sleeping pill for months and months and months or even years and years, and all of a sudden you go cold turkey off of it, you could be up for 3 days.
Yikes.
Right. And by the second day, you will take any drug given to you to go to sleep. Right.
Well, and do those, but and what role do those play in impacting the quality of your sleep? Because I've heard you talk about that.
Great question. So there's some of the older school drugs, what we call the benzodiazepines. This is things like Restoril, Xanax, lorazepam, temazepam, anything with a PAM, P-A-M on the end of the generic is falls into that benzo category. Those are old school anxiety drugs, and they affect sleep architecture. All they do is they sledgehammer you to sleep. Okay. Some of the newer medications that are out there, so the Ambiens, the Sonatas, Lunestas, there's a few others now that are actually newer and better technology. Those don't appear to affect sleep architecture as much. So the quality of sleep, what you were asking, does not appear to be affected nearly as much as it used to be with those older school drugs. But don't be fooled. They do affect them, right? Yep. But at the end of the day, what would you rather have? No sleep or affected sleep, right? If I've got a person who's a paranoid schizophrenic with suicidal ideation, they get a pill, right? Like that's just how that works.
Sure. So what are some of the biggest like sleep disruptors that you see, right? So when you think about what are the
Oh,
most
yeah.
common things that you're like, oh gosh, I mean,
Easy.
yeah,
Easy.
hit me with those, because I think those are things
if-
that our listeners we can work to not do.
Oh, of course.
Not have show up.
So the number one thing, if everybody is listening, if you get nothing else from our podcast today, take this tip home with you, okay? Which is wake up at the same time 7 days a week. Do not, I repeat, do not sleep in on the weekends. Let me explain the biology and why this is so important. So it turns out that the time that you wake up directly determines what time melatonin is produced in your body at night. So let me say that again. The time that you wake up directly affects when melatonin is produced at night, almost 14 to 16 hours later. So when you wake up in the morning, sunlight hits your eyeball, and you have a special cell in here called a melanopsin cell, and it sends a signal to the back of your brain to turn off the melatonin faucet in your head. But it sets a timer for 14 hours from there. So it's called the melatonin phase response curve. So if you wake up at 6, 14 hours later is 8 p.m. at night. That's when melatonin starts. It takes 90 minutes for it to get up and in. By 9:30, you're feeling sleepy. 10 o'clock, 10:30, you go to bed.
Wow.
So let's say you're doing that all week, and then Saturday hits, and you say, there's no way I'm waking up at 6 on Saturday. Michael, I'm going to sleep in. This is going to be freaking amazing. And you sleep until 8. Guess what happens? Melatonin now doesn't start until 10 o'clock at night, and it doesn't get up and in until 11:30. So what happens is when you stay up late on Friday, sleep in on Saturday, stay up late on Saturday, sleep in on Sunday, Molly, this is why Mondays suck, okay? Because you have rotated your circadian rhythm. The easiest way for you to have regular sleep is to wake up 7 days a week. So what I tell my patients is pick the day that you have to, earliest day. So if for whatever reason you have to be up at 6 a.m. or 6:30 in the morning, and that's the earliest day, then set that as your constant wake up time, and then do it on Saturday and do it on Sunday. Now people always say to me, they're like, well, what if I want to go out Friday night? I don't care. Go out. Have a great time. Enjoy yourself, right? Get up at 6:30.
But wake up at 6.
Exactly. Here's what will happen is you'll go out once till about 1 o'clock in the morning, and then you'll try to get up at 6. It'll be a freaking nightmare, and you'll never do it again. I'm not suggesting, by the way, that you can never do this. But what I am saying is by creating this morning wake-up time that is stagnant, it will actually help you personally self-metric your bedtime. Because here's what you're going to do. You're going to be looking at your watch and be like, oh shit, it's 11:30. I've got to be up at 6. I need to get home.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's
you'll
interesting
start
what you're
to
saying.
self-regulate your behavior.
It's interesting what you're saying, because when I am super intentional about what time I go to bed and what time I wake up, and I definitely do that. And when I don't, I feel like it is so. It's a disaster. It's a train wreck. Like I feel like because there's such level of intentionality and rhythm that when it doesn't happen, I just
your body misses
it feels
it.
like
This
weird.
is a habit that your body has gotten used to. And by the way, it's your circadian rhythm, right? And so it's this internal biological rhythm that measures and deals with every single system in your body. So when you have a regular sleep system, it regularizes all of the other systems. So for people who have stomach upset, for people who get headaches, for people who have all these other problems, when you regularize your sleep schedule, you will be shocked at how easily other things are now attainable. So step number 1 is to have one wake up time. Step number 2 is to stop caffeine by 2 p.m. So most people don't realize it, but sleep in and of itself is a dehydrative event. You lose almost a full liter of water every night just from the humidity in your breath. Okay?
Wow. So
when you wake up in the morning, you really don't want to caffeinate. You want to hydrate first. My newest book is called Sleep, Drink, Breathe. Wellness is Too Complicated. And we really delve into hydration, the importance of hydration, why you should be drinking water, all of these types of different things. At the end of the day, there's really only 3 things that you need to know about hydration. Number 1, get most of your water in before about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because otherwise you're going to be peeing all night long, which is going to be very disruptive to your sleep. Okay. Number 2, you want to sip, don't gulp. See, there you go. Grab a drink. Sip,
I mean, you've
don't.
inspired me. Yes,
I
I've
like
heard you
it.
say that. Sip, don't gulp. That's interesting.
So let me tell you why. So when you walk out in the morning to your kitchen, right, and there's this little square sponge that's sitting by the sink, right, and it's hard as rock. You could bang nails with that thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
When you open up the faucet all the way, like gulping water, what happens? The water hits it, splashes off. Nothing really happens. But if you just open it up a little bit and you let a few drops hit it, what happens? It absorbs, it expands, and now you have a useful tool. You are the sponge, Molly. So sip, don't gulp, right?
Yeah.
The other big thing is getting enough water in. The easiest way to figure out if you're hydrated is look at the color of your urine. If it is a light pale yellow to clear, you're good. If it is not that color, then you probably need to drink a little bit more water. So step number 2 is hydrate before you caffeinate. And then if you're going to caffeinate, stop caffeine by 2 p.m. Most people don't know it, but caffeine has a half-life of between 6 and 8 hours. And some people are more sensitive or less sensitive to caffeine. So if you can stop by 2, then by 10, right, at least half of it is out of your system. So I'll tell you an interesting story. I actually just got back from Belgium where I was giving lectures, and in between the lectures, several people came up to me and were asking me questions. And this fellow came up to me, really nice guy, and he said, I got the weirdest question. He said, I'm in the coffee business, right? So he makes coffee, grinds beans, grows all the stuff, right? And I'm like, okay, great. How much coffee do you drink a day? He says, well, he said, I probably have about 9 cups of coffee a day. And I'm like, oh my God. And I said,
that's
and he
a
said,
problem.
well, to be right. I'm like, this could be an issue, dude. Right. And so what he didn't realize was, he said, it was fascinating because he said he stopped by about 2 o'clock, but he found that he still had problems sleeping at night. When you have 9 cups of coffee on board at approximately 75 milligrams of caffeine per cup, even if you cut it in half by 10 o'clock, there's still so much caffeine on board that it's almost impossible to sleep. So it's about amount and it's about distance from lights out as to being allowed to continue to do caffeine. I want to be super clear. I'm not taking caffeine away from anybody, okay? I like a cup of coffee every once in a while myself. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but keep it towards the front end of your day. Step number 3 has to do with alcohol. We already talked a little bit about alcohol, but let's get into how can I still have a drink and have a decent night's sleep. Again, the distance from lights out turns out to be your friend. So it takes the average human body approximately 1 hour to digest 1 alcoholic beverage. But when you fall asleep, that number turns to 3. Okay? So don't answer this question out loud, Molly. But in your best drinking days, did you ever go to bed or, shall we say, pass out and then wake up drunk? It's happened to me before, right? Where you are partying so hard until 1 o'clock in the morning, and you got to get up at 7 o'clock, and you wake up and you're like, "Oh my God, I think I'm still, got one on."
I got a nice buzz
right?
still. Yeah, I mean, I think I've had 1 or 2 of those, but I think that's about it. I don't like how that feels, right?
No, it feels disgusting. But what I'm trying to tell you is during sleep, your metabolism slows down. So if you distance the alcohol from before lights out, there's less of a likelihood of this. So step number 3 is to stop alcohol 3 hours before bed, and put in a couple of glasses of water. That way you fill your belly with something, it starts to flush it out, gets it out of your system, and you can still do it. I don't have anything, if you want to, have a nice glass of wine with your dinner, I don't think I care. I don't even care if you have 2 of them. But if you're going to have 2 glasses of wine, have a glass of water in between each, and then wait 3 hours after you're done before you go to bed. It's pretty straightforward.
Makes sense.
The fourth thing I tell people to do, and there's only 5 steps in the plan, so don't worry, I won't keep going forever, is exercise. So exercise is the single best way to improve sleep quality without having to do anything really difficult. The good news is you don't have to run a marathon. So it's about 25 minutes of cardio at least once a day, preferably in the morning time. What a lot of people don't know is that when you exercise after work, it increases your core body temperature, and your core body temperature has got to get lower in order for you to fall asleep. So if you're going to exercise in the late afternoon or early evening, you're going to want to take a cool to colder shower to, again, lower that body temperature, because what you don't want is that increasing body temperature can make it kind of difficult. The final piece of advice that I give in my 5-step plan is when you wake up in the morning, what I want you to do is something called the 3-15s, which is you sit at the end of your bed and you take 15 deep breaths just to open up your lungs and kind of bring yourself present. Drink 15 ounces of water, because like I said, you are dehydrated, and then walk outside or drink your water outside and get 15 minutes of sunlight. Now you might be thinking, oh, here we go. California doctor, Mr. Woo-Woo, he's all sunshine and barefoot, right? There's real data behind this. So when the sunlight hits your eye, it actually helps turn off the melatonin faucet in your head and helps you clear brain fog. So if people follow this plan, step number 1, wake up at the same time every single day. Step number 2, stop caffeine by 2 p.m. Step number 3, stop alcohol 3 hours before bed. Step number 4, exercise daily, but stop exercise 4 hours before bed. And step number 5, my 3-15s, which is 15 deep breaths, 15 ounces of water, and 15 minutes of sunshine. If all they do is follow this plan, which by the way doesn't cost them a dime, I can assure you, you will see an improvement in sleep quality by between 20 and 30%.
That's unbelievable.
10 to 15 days. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Mic drop.
What about mic drop, doc, mic drop. What about people, like, what is your advice to people who have trouble falling asleep? They lay down in bed, they go to bed. I mean, talk to me.
So generally speaking, when people have a hard time falling asleep, it's usually because it's the first time of the day that they've had a chance alone with their thoughts, right? So all day long, people have been telling them to do stuff, asking them for things. They're a mom, they're a boss, they're what, whatever they are. And somebody's been all day long. When you finally get in bed and you turn off the light and your bed partner isn't talking to you, all of your thoughts come flooding in from the day. Oh, did I say this right? Did I forget to pick this up? Oh, crap, Johnny's got to go to do this tomorrow. And all these things come rolling through your brain, right?
Sure.
That's problematic. So what I have my patients do who have a hard time falling asleep is 2 things. Number 1, I have them create what I call a worry journal. So it's just a piece of paper. They draw a line down the middle. Each one of your concerns is on the left side, and then 1 step towards solving that concern on the right. Not a complete solution. The first step. So as an example, my son's name is Cooper. And so if I got a call from school that said, hey, Cooper's in trouble, then I would write down Cooper's in trouble on one side. And on the other side, I would say, email teacher to set up an appointment to discuss what's going on with Cooper. Now I don't have to worry about this any longer, right? I'm not going to sit there and worry about it. I've already made my plan. I can now set that aside and move on to the second stressor. And now the key factor.
And so that's like by your bedside table and you're doing it there? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes and no. I'm glad you asked that, because that's exactly what I was going to say is you don't want to do this immediately before bed, because then you can't think of anything but your worries. So what I have my patients do is do it right after dinner. So maybe they're done with dinner and they've got a little bit of time. They can sit at the kitchen table and just write a few things down by themselves, and then fold the paper, put it away. And by the way, that right-hand side is your new to-do list for the next day, right? Yep. Well, because you've already figured it out, so you might as well have that become your to-do list. Now your stress is lowered. Now you move on to phase 2. So phase 1 is removal of stress. Phase 2 is I need to lower my heart rate. So what people don't know is in order to enter a state of unconsciousness, you need a heart rate of 60 or below. So whatever you need to do to get your heart rate down, I recommend that you do. For me, I like to do meditation, relaxation exercises, prayer, read a book, watch TV. I don't give a shit. Whatever runway you need to land the plane, figure it out and do it. Right. Yeah. But if it's drinking 3 Jack and Cokes, that's probably not a good idea.
Right. Totally. Right? What about people who wake up in the middle of the night, right? Like they wake up in the middle, okay, so I hear my husband wake up, 3:30, 4 in the morning. Sometimes I'll see something and he gives himself a minute, but then he'll pull out his iPad, which I'm like, honey, that is a disaster, right? That is not ideal. And so which I would imagine for a lot of reasons, like the iPad, the light, all that. But so I would imagine that is not a solution. But tell me, what do you tell people who wake up in the middle of the night? What's the best move?
This is the number one question that I'm asked everywhere is, what do I do if I find myself waking up somewhere between 1 and 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I either can't return to sleep or it takes me hours to return to sleep? So I'm glad you asked the question. Just to give everybody an idea, and we can put this in the show notes, I have a video that actually details out this entire thing. It's the most popular video on my YouTube channel. Go over to the Sleep Doctor on YouTube. It's got, I think, over 5.5 million views at this point. So let me break this down to tell people exactly what to do. So there's a reason why you wake up in the middle of the night. So your core body temperature rises, and hits a peak around 10:30 at night. When that peak hits, then there's a subsequent drop in your core body temperature. That drop in core body temperature is a signal to your brain to release melatonin. Remember, melatonin is kind of that key that starts the engine for sleep, so you gotta have that process. However, your core body temperature continues to drop and drop and drop and drop. At some point in time, if your internal furnace doesn't heat up, you go hypothermic and you die. Guess what time that is?
Between 1 and 3.
You got it, girl. I'm glad you fell for that
so
one.
Smart.
Exactly. So every human on Earth, wakes up between 1 and 3 o'clock in the morning. However, 95% of humans, they wake up, they burp, they fart, they roll over, and they go to bed, right? They don't even realize they've awoken. However, there is a select group of people who wake up and stay up. And so let's talk about that situation. So I want to be very, very clear. If you are waking up between 1 and 3 o'clock in the morning, it is not your fault. You didn't do something wrong. This is a natural biological process that occurs. Now, if you drank 12 cups of coffee before bed, yeah, that is your fucking fault. Okay, if you drank, two bottles of wine, then yeah, you are waking up for that reason. But let's assume that there's no external substance, that you have a fairly regular bedtime, and you're waking up and you don't know why. So there are a couple of rules that I want to tell you about. So rule number 1, and this was, by the way, our mutual friend Jennifer's favorite rule, which is don't pee. So you're like, what?
I know, I heard this on her podcast. Yeah. So this is so interesting.
So don't go pee. So people are like, what is he talking about? So here's the deal. When you wake up in the middle of the night, most people say, well, I'm up. I might as well go pee. This is a terrible idea because in order to enter a state of unconsciousness, you need a heart rate of 60 or below. What do you think happens to your heart rate when you go from a lying position to a seated position to a standing position and you walk across the room? Your heart rate goes straight up. And now you got 2 problems on your hands. So do me a favor. Don't go pee. Now, just to be clear, if you really have to go to the bathroom, please go to the bathroom, okay? But what I'm suggesting is don't just go if you don't really think you have to go because you're just compounding your problem.
Right.
Second big issue is people look at the clock, right? Why is this problematic? Because you instantly do the mental math and now you're pissed off, right?
You start freaking out.
And when you get pissed, right, what happens to your heart rate when you freak out?
Yeah, it goes up.
Again, same problem. Your heart rate goes up. So you don't want to do anything in the middle of the night that increases your heart rate. You only want to do things that will decrease your heart rate. Pulling out your iPad may or may not fall into that category. For some people, it might be a tool in which they can watch some boring videos or they can play a podcast or something like that, and it allows them to distract themselves enough to fall back asleep. I don't think I have a tremendous problem with it, but I'll be honest with you, it's not efficient, it's not going to work every time, and you're going to drive your bed partner a little crazy. Also, if you really get into the video, you could be there for 45 minutes to 2 hours, and again, that's not accomplishing the goal, right? So let's say you've woken up, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you haven't peed, and you didn't look at the clock, but you're still awake. What do? My favorite technique at this point in time is called 4-7-8 breathing, right? So this is a breathing technique. This has been around for a very long time. A fellow by the name of Dr. Andrew Weil developed this technique with the Navy SEALs, where you slowly breathe in for a count of 4, You hold for a count of 7. You breathe out for a count of 8. Now, you have to do this almost 20 times for your heart rate to slowly drop down. And these aren't forced breaths. These are slow breaths in. And while you're breathing in, you should imagine a number, right? So as you're breathing in, you should see a 4, then a 3, then a 2, then a 1.
Okay.
And when you're holding, you should see a 7 and a 6 all the way down. And then when you push out, you should see an 8, 7, 6 all the way out. And again, this is a very methodical, very relaxed, very non-aggressive breath, right? When you get to about the 20th cycle, your heart rate has completely dumped well below 60, and it's much, much easier for the natural sleep process to come in. Now, Molly, I'm going to tell you something. I have this problem every once in a while myself, and so I tried this technique myself, and here's where it messed up. I lost count, right? So I got to like, 4 or 5 cycles, and then I'm like, shit, which one am I at? My heart rate jacked right back up, and I was in a panic, okay? So here's how I fixed that, is when you're lying there, make 2 very light fists, keep them on your sides, and when you go through one cycle, just stick out a finger. And when you go through a second cycle, stick out a finger. Well, by the time you get here, you've done 10 cycles, then you bring it back. Most people are asleep by the time they get back. See what I'm saying? Like they go out 10, and while they're trying to come back, they usually don't make it. So what's beautiful about this technique is it avoids monkey mind. So monkey mind, believe it or not, is a Buddhist word, and it means this repetitive thinking, this inability to stop the chatter in your head. Here's the best part, is when you're thinking about those numbers and you're counting and you're seeing those numbers, you can't think of anything stressful. And if you're following the breathing pattern, it drops your heart rate down. So it's a double hack. It distracts you and it relaxes you at the same time. Something like box breathing doesn't usually work nearly as well as a 4-7-8. There are a lot of different breathing techniques out there. I would absolutely advise people to try different ones that they like. For me, 4-7-8, and for my patients, it seems to work really, really well. Now, let's say it's still the middle of the night and you didn't go to the bathroom. You didn't look at the clock. You did your 4-7-8 breathing. You went through 20 cycles, still not asleep. If you're getting pissed off, get out of bed.
That's not going to happen. Okay. Interesting.
Right. Because all you're doing is you're getting frustrated. Now, what I also do is for all of my patients who have this, I have them create an environment for them to go directly to. So there's a chair, usually a very comfortable one, or an area of the couch, right, that has their favorite book right there, has a little book light that's attached to the back of the book, so there's not lights going on and all this other nonsense, right? They go over, they open up their book, they read it for a little bit, then their eyes start to feel heavy, so they turn off their book light, they wander back to bed, and then they can go back to sleep, right? There's nothing wrong with doing that. But what you don't want to do is sit there and be like, damn it, I'm pissed. Stomping around the house. What am I going to do now? Oh, I'm going to turn on the TV. Oh, I'm going to clean the kitchen. No. Don't do any of that.
Right.
Just kind of, really relax. Have an area that you can go to.
I love that.
And be calm and be quiet. Even if you get back at this point and you're still not able to sleep, you've got 2 options. One, something called non-sleep deep rest. It used to be called yoga nidra, okay? So this has been around for thousands and thousands of years. So it's basically lying in what we call the corpse pose, so your arms are crisscrossed like this, eyes closed, and just relaxing. It turns out it's rejuvenative. It's not the same as sleep. If you do that for an hour, it's worth about 20 minutes of sleep. So I tell people all the time, look, even if you're just lying there doing nothing but relaxing, believe it or not, you're actually doing something that's good for your body. So relax. And then the final piece of advice I tell people is you've got to learn acceptance, okay? Sometimes your body just doesn't need to sleep. Trust your body. If for whatever reason you're awake and no matter what you try, you're not going back to bed, it's not like your head's gonna pop off, right? It's like people are like, oh my God, if I don't get enough sleep, something terrible is gonna happen. Bullshit, okay? I can assure you that every single person listening to this podcast has had a sleepless night and their head didn't explode, right?
Right.
But in the middle of the night, that's what we think. We start thinking, oh my God, I'm going to say something terrible to my boss tomorrow, or I'm going to tell my partner to screw off, or whatever. That never happens. And if it does, just call that person up and say, you know what? I didn't sleep for shit last night, so I really want to apologize for my behavior today. And then they'll be like, oh, I've had that happen to me. I totally get it. Like, you're forgiven, right? And so don't make a bigger deal of this than it is. Let me give you a final example, Molly, that from my own life that I think was very, very interesting. So my wife went away to visit her family, and I stayed home. We have 2 dogs. One of them is a little bit older, so we don't really like to have people watch him. It's either me or my wife that watch our older French bulldog. His name's Hugo. And so and Hugo sleeps in the bed with my wife and I, with, by the way, a big screen TV that's on all night long. I'm the sleep doctor, Molly, and this is how I sleep every night.
Okay, this is interesting.
So we're giving people
real.
a lot of space. All right, we're getting real, and we're keeping it real. So before my wife left, she said, make sure that Hugo sleeps in the bed next to you. And I was like, he drives me crazy because he snores. And what he does is in the middle of the night, he comes up and he literally puts his head on my pillow, not her pillow, my pillow, right next to my ear, and he snores in my ear. Okay, Now, I don't know why, whenever I'm in the house, he's always with me. Like, he's my buddy. Like, I love this dog, right?
Yeah, Hugo
so I'm
sounds
down.
like he's got it pretty good.
Oh, trust me, I should come back as Hugo.
Hugo's got it going on.
Hugo's got the best life ever. And so she said to me, well, I like his snoring because I always know that he's safe and that he's alive in the middle of the night. And I was like, ugh. If this dog dies while my wife is away, I'm done. Like, there's no universe you can come back from that. And he's my buddy. I don't want him to die. So all of a sudden, the meaning of his snoring went from annoyance to safety.
Right. Sure.
I love when this dog fucking snores. Are you kidding me? If I can't hear him snoring in the middle of the night, I get worried now.
Oh, wow.
So something that was so annoying and aggressive and that I hated, now I love and I want to have there. So the point of the story is there's almost nothing out there that you can't change your mindset around or change the emotion that's attached to it. Like, I get it. If you've got a bed partner that's snoring in your ear and it drives you crazy, okay, get them to go get a sleep test. Get them to, if you think they might have sleep apnea, but just remember something, you can hear them. That's good.
Yeah. No, totally. What about eating? You've talked about supplements and drinking water, alcohol, etc. What about food right before you go to bed? My father sometimes talks about this. He's 87, my mom's 83, and sometimes he'll say, like, in the morning, I didn't sleep well, but I think it's because I ate fill in the blank, right? Get me inside of that a little bit.
So here's what I'll tell you I think is interesting is I used to have a recommendation that I called my 3-2-1 recommendation, which was stop alcohol 3 hours, stop food 2 hours, and stop fluids 1 hour before bed. And that worked pretty well. And then I switched it to a 3-3-3 recommendation. So you should stop food, alcohol, and water, assuming that your doctor says this is okay. I want to be very, very clear. There are people who need to take medication. If you're diabetic, this is a terrible idea. You should be drinking water. But at the end of the day, if you push that out about 3 hours before and make sure that you go to the bathroom, it will absolutely slow down the number of bathroom interruptions, and it does appear to improve overall sleep quality because the digestive process really is quite energy dependent. And that takes away from a lot of what's going on for sleep.
Yeah.
So your dad's right.
Yeah. No, that's cool. No, I love it. And question for you. I travel a lot for work. A lot of people travel a lot for work who listen. Tell me a little bit about like my strategy. I don't know. So I travel a lot for work. Our listeners travel a lot for work. And for me personally, my strategy, if I go to Vegas, if I go to California I'm based in Atlanta, I stay on, usually if it's a 2 to 3 day, 1 day trip, I stay on East Coast time. Like I'm up at 4 at the gym in Vegas, right? Because it's 7 in Atlanta. What's your take on that? And based on what you said, I would imagine, give me some sleep hack tricks and tips for people who travel and across time zones.
So jet lag is what you're talking about. And different people can look at it different ways. I can tell you that it's actually a math problem and it's been solved. Let me explain. So you're right now it's 1:00 here in California, or 1:15 here in California, and that's where my body clock is. If I was going to now go to, let's say, Munich, which is a 13-hour flight and 19 time zones away, I could have light, very specific intensity for a specific period of time shown in front of me, and I could rotate my circadian rhythm by up to 8 hours with one dose of light.
You're kidding.
This is a very well known, this has been around for 30 years, okay?
Wow.
So it becomes a math problem, right? So if it's 1:00 here and it's, whatever time it is in Munich, and I want to arrive on Munich time, then I need to know what time my body clock is here, what time do I need to get my dose of light to advance my clock. Then once I've woken up from advancing my clock, use a little bit of caffeine to keep me awake. Then about 7-8 hours later, use a little bit of melatonin to help me fall asleep because my body's not used to that yet. And it catches up like this. In 2 days, I can actually get myself onto the new schedule. So to answer your question, when you go from Atlanta to LA, if it's me, I don't change.
Okay.
I just stay on whatever my original time was, if I can. Now, you see, that's easy when you're going from east to west, but it's not easy when you're going from west to east. So when I come from LA to New York to go do Good Morning America or the Today Show or Mark and Kelly or something like that, and they say it's a 7 a.m. wake up time for a call time in studio, that's 3 o'clock in the morning for me. Right?
Yeah.
Or 4 o'clock in the morning for me.
Good morning, Breus.
Right? So it's different depending upon your direction of travel. And some people will feel more of it depending upon which direction they're going in. I always try to remind people that east is least and west is best. Now, I know what I'm saying sounds a little bit complicated, but actually there's an app. So full disclosure, I am both an investor and developer of this app. It's called Time Shifter, TIMESHIFTER. We can put that in the show notes.
Perfect, we will.
But it's fantastic. I've used it. I just got back from Munich, which is why I use that as an example, where I was giving lectures. But I've used it to Moscow. I've used it to Munich. I've used it to Milan.
And it helps you with this shift and the light and what you just described.
Oh, it literally gives you a schedule for 2 days before you leave, and then you arrive on time. So if you were going from here to Munich, I can have you arrive on Munich time, no problem.
That's pretty killer.
It works perfectly.
That's cool. So circadian rhythm, you mentioned that.
That's what we're talking about here, is shifting that rhythm.
Okay. Yeah, and the circadian rhythm, how do you define circadian rhythm? Just yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, so circadian rhythm, so sleep is basically formed with two processes in the brain. One is sleep drive, the other is sleep rhythm. The rhythm is called your circadian rhythm. And so everybody has circadian rhythms. Believe it or not, you have almost 300 rhythms in your body. Like your liver has its own circadian rhythm, your brain has its own circadian rhythm, your muscles have their own, your skin has a circadian rhythm. Like there are all of these rhythms that can actually be tracked in many, many different ways. So we do have, but what a circadian rhythm is, for the purpose of our discussion, is when during the daytime you feel sleepy. So as an example, there are these things called chronotypes. So some people are early birds and some people are night owls. Those are types of circadian rhythms. And by the way, those are genetics. So if you're born an early bird, you're an early bird.
Interesting. Okay, I love it.
Yeah. So
tell me about the sleep study. You've mentioned that you have a sleep study that sounds pretty killer. What is it? How do we take it?
So it used to be, Molly, before COVID, when somebody would come to me and I would say, gosh, I think they might have sleep apnea, or I think they might have narcolepsy or something like that, like a formal sleep disorder, or they were just like, Michael, my sleep quality is shit. I need to figure this out. What's going on? We would do a sleep study. Now, back in the day, this was terrible. Like, first of all, it would take 4 to 6 weeks just to get you into the lab. right? Once you were in the lab, I would glue 27 electrodes to your head. I would put a respiratory belt across your chest. I would have things on your legs. I would have two video cameras looking at you. I know, right? Sounds like a blast. And then I would expect you to sleep all night long. Now, fast forward, COVID hits, and nobody wants to sleep in the same bed as somebody else. And nobody wants electrodes that were used on somebody else. So everything became disposable and everything became portable. So now we actually have wrist-worn devices and even rings, not the Aura ring or the Whoop strap. I want to be very clear. Those are trackers and those are not medical devices, but true medical devices that we can send to your home. What used to take 7 weeks to accomplish, I can do in 72 hours now. So if people out, it's quite remarkable. So as an example, you could go to my website, click on a button that says sleep test, and then you would schedule a meeting with one of our doctors. So you would actually get on a calendar. Again, all from the comfort of your own home. You would do a Zoom call with the doctor. They would talk with you. They would learn your symptomatology. They could push a button, send you a sleep study. Sleep study would show up in the mail, right? You then pull it out. I know, it's crazy. In the mail. You then pull it out, put the ring on your finger or this on your, push the button that says go to sleep, wake up, push the button that says stop. Information ports to your phone, goes to the cloud. It's like unbelievable. I feel like I'm living in the land of the Jetsons, right? Goes to the cloud, goes to one of our doctors who then reads the entire study. 24 hours later, 24 hours after you're done, you then are meeting with one of our doctors that's giving you a diagnosis and telling you what the treatment protocols are.
Wow, so that is incredible.
What took 7 weeks takes 72 hours now.
Yeah.
And here's the good news, is a lot of people who might be listening are saying, well, I heard about those sleep studies. Almost everybody who has a sleep study ends up with sleep apnea, and almost everybody with sleep apnea ends up on this thing called a CPAP machine. And I don't want to end up with a CPAP machine, Michael, so why would I do a sleep study? So let's address that just for half a second. So first of all, not everybody ends up on a CPAP machine. I want to make that extremely clear.
You're not an investor in CPAP.
I am not an investor in CPAP at all.
Got it.
But here's what I will tell you. CPAP works 99% of the time. It's literally the best treatment in all of medicine. Like, we don't have another treatment that works as well as CPAP does. So I want to let people know that while this is not a fun process, this is a mask that sits on your face, and basically there's a hair dryer blowing up your nose all night long to help keep your lungs inflated. Here's what I will tell you. It sucks at first. Within 2 to 3 weeks, you get used to it. And I have people now who no longer have apnea, and they won't get rid of their CPAP machine. They love it so much. Okay?
Wow, that's interesting.
So there is an adjustment period, right? But it's not the only way to treat it. There are now mouth guards that slowly pulls your bottom jaw forward, which will open up your posterior airway space. There's something called Excite OSA, which helps shrink your tongue. No pain involved, doesn't change your ability to taste, talk, or kiss. So everything still works. There are a lot of different treatment modalities besides CPAP. It's really worthwhile at least finding out if you've got the disorder, because a lot of people don't know this, but for example, underlying sleep apnea usually causes high blood pressure, and it's high blood pressure that cannot be controlled with medication. So it's called refractory hypertension, or medication that hypertension, high blood pressure that's not reactive to medication, almost always has got underlying sleep apnea. I think it's like 82% of cases or something crazy like that. So we just want to identify it and let people make some decisions for themselves. And so what we've done is we've created this, easy format. And by the way, it's all of $200, and your insurance covers it usually.
Wow, that sounds incredible.
I know, crazy,
I mean,
right?
it sounds like I can think of a few friends that would benefit.
Absolutely.
So, Michael, I want to hit you with a couple quick rapid fire questions.
Let's do it.
Fire back. All right, what's your bedtime routine?
So my bedtime routine is, generally speaking, I like to catch the sports scores on ESPN before I fall asleep. And then I've usually got something on Netflix that I'm kind of starting to meander through, but it's not one of those things that I'm like dying to see the next moment of, so that it doesn't really get me there. So that's usually what calms me down before bed. Then I usually I go to bed somewhere between 11:30 and probably 12. o'clock. My wife is usually falling asleep in bed beforehand with the big screen TV on and the 2 French bulldogs in the bed. I then have an eye mask that I wear, and I have earplugs that I put in, and I just manage my way into bed, put my arm around a French bulldog, and I'm done. And then I wake up the next day. That
sounds romantic, man. I can't tell you. That's incredible. What about your wake-up routine?
So I'll tell you about my wake-up routine, but I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a little on the OCD side when it comes to my wake-up routine. So you'll see when I explain.
I'm down.
So
yeah, we're in.
I wake up on my own somewhere between 5:45 and 6:15, just naturally. I get up and I take my older dog downstairs, let him out. Then we come into my office, into my meditation area, and then he and I meditate together for about 20 minutes every morning. So I sit on the ground. I have a headband that helps me, know what state my brain is in. He comes and sits on my lap, and he falls asleep on me, and his breathing is kind of what I tune my breathing to. Wow, and so we just kind of hang out together. I get through that, wake him up, finish my meditation, go upstairs, get my second dog who's younger, who doesn't like to get up so early, feed the boys, take them for a walk. Then I come back, I sit on the ground, and I play with them for a good 3 minutes, just me and the dogs, because who doesn't want unconditional love every single morning? Like, it's kind of great.
On. Yeah.
And then I leave the house by 7:30, and I hit the gym. I'm usually at the gym from 7:30. Well, I get there around 7:45 till about 8:45. I do a sauna at the gym until about 9:15. Then I'm home by 9:30. I make myself a high protein breakfast, and I'm behind my desk by 10. I don't take a meeting before 10 o'clock any day.
Okay, that's amazing. When do you have coffee? I need to know, because
I'm not
you're not a coffee guy.
I'm not a huge coffee guy, but what I will do is when I get to the gym, I will get a half a cup just before I start to do my cardio. And I usually do a fasting cardio. And so that's actually kind of helpful for me to do a fasting cardio.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. You know, it's interesting because I have a red light sauna at my house and a cold plunge.
I love them.
And they're amazing. I'm a big fan. I mean, I know sleep is, I've heard you say that, right? More important than all of those things. But it's interesting because what I'm hearing you say is that it wouldn't be good to do a red light sauna at 170 degrees before you go to bed. It's optimal in the morning, isn't it?
Well, so it depends. So as an example, there's some data to show that if you do it about 90 minutes before bed, that gives your body enough time for that cool down. And for some people with insomnia, that could actually be helpful. So what I would say, and I love those infrared saunas.
Sure.
We're actually thinking about getting one ourselves. So what I would tell you is experiment around. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to get in that hot sauna within 90 minutes of bedtime, because your body heat will just go too high. Or do the sauna, and then I wouldn't do a cold plunge, but I might do a cool plunge. Like you don't want ice cold water going from hot to cold, hot to cold. While it feels amazing, it's just too, it brings you to present and makes it very difficult to fall asleep.
What's one piece of sleep advice that you strongly disagree with, but that's still super popular right now?
So,
interesting. And he's tapping his wrist. You're talking about these wearables? Is that what you're talking about, wearables?
So,
okay.
I am, but I'm also telling you that we don't have much time left.
Okay. Just go ahead. My guys will cut that. Yeah.
So from a wearables standpoint, here's one of the things that people don't understand is most wearables are not accurate. They're actually only about 80% accurate, and that becomes highly problematic when you start to make major decisions surrounding it. So you only want to look at the trends in the data. What you don't want to do is look at the exact numbers. So when somebody comes up to me and says, my Oura Ring says I got a 45, I don't really give a shit. It's like if it says the same thing every day, then you're probably fine. If it changes or you've got a delta, that's when you want to figure out what's going on. Got it.
Awesome. All right, so last question. Who or what is a game changer? Who inspires you and why?
Oh, that's a great question.
I mean, I'm sort of thinking it might be that dog. Is it Hugo?
Hugo.
I'm just
Hugo
kidding.
Is a game changer.
He's kind of a game changer, but
who is a game changer for me? I think the person that was most influential in my career for sleep was, unfortunately, he passed away. His name is Dr. Bill Dement. He wrote the book, The Promise of Sleep. And he was the very first one of the first sleep researchers. He helped discover REM sleep and some of the other things out there. So he was really a game changer for me because he told me, I was one of the first people to get in the media and talk about sleep. And he told me, and there were a lot of people who didn't like me doing that, and he told me to keep doing it. And he said, you get out there and you be an advocate. He said, you shout as loud as you can and as long as you can. And he supported me up until the very end of his life. And so I would say Bill Dement would probably be one of the big ones for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Michael, thank you so much. I know I'll be sleeping better, and so will so many others. It's awesome to have you on.
Thanks, Molly. Sweet dreams.